I'm here today with my friend Nathan Maingard, and we're going to talk about the shadow. We've been friends for about, I don't know, 8 years, maybe 7, 8 years.
I think so. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
about eight is accurate.
yeah. And Nate inspired me to be an independent musician a long time ago. But yeah, would you like to introduce yourself, Nathan?
Sh- Sure. Yeah. So my name is Nathan Maingard. I'm from South Africa. I used to go by Nate. I don't anymore. Just from many perspectives, but talking as we're going to be talking about the shadow, I think for me, Nate was a way to kind of meet the world a little more safely. Like Nate sounds like a cool guy. Nate, what's up, Nate? Just like feels short and abrupt and easy, and like Nate must be a cool guy. And over time, as I've done deeper work in looks into myself, I've realized that the word Nathan is a much softer word, and it feels more rooted and grounded, and it doesn't have as much to prove. And it's almost more poetic in the sound. It's like Nate versus Nathan. And so yeah, it's been an interesting journey of reclamation, just that. But other than that, I my entire life's purpose is really to support seekers who are on the path of rediscovering themselves. And so I do that by supporting through things like breathwork, songs, stories, and poems, coaching, facilitation, ice baths, like anything that really does the job of returning someone to that beautiful center that is known as the self. And it's my great honor to be on that path and to be walking it myself, so that I then, when I'm sitting with someone, I'm like, I can empathize
Mm,
with what it is that they're actually going through.
I love that. Yeah, straight in to the deep end. Yeah,
Always.
yeah, love that. Cool. Yeah. So something you just said, kind of. So last night I was preparing for this conversation, and I was listening to a bit of Alan Watts, like describing the shadow, Jung's concept of the shadow, um, and something that stuck out to me in what you just said was when you can see like these dark parts of yourself or these depths of yourself, like it provides like some sort of ease to empathize and to understand those parts in other people. So maybe your perception of them will be less judgmental. And that's something I got from what you just said anyway, just now.
Hmm.
But
Oh, I'm still super judgmental, but I'm just aware that I'm judgmental, and I'm aware of where it's coming from and how it's
mm,
like hierarchical. Because if I know that I'm better than someone, then that must mean that I'm doing okay. And if I know that I'm worse than someone, then that gives me a chance to be a victim and judge myself. And so
mm,
I don't think the judgment's up, but that's the shadow. It's instead of denying it, it's like I recognize it and I realize that it's trying its best to place me within reality in a way that I can live a life of some kind of meaning or contentment or something like
mm.
that.
What a relief as well, because like just to recognize that you're imperfect and that you've got these parts of you that are less than desirable, and just like becoming peaceful with that, like what a relief.
It is a relief. I think for me it only happens through getting very uncomfortable though. I think that's part of the weird sort of paradox of it, is that I only become at peace with all the parts of myself when I'm willing to get uncomfortable enough to meet them and really meet them. Not meet them as like, oh, let's just look at this part so we can fix it, but to actually allow myself to go into it and whatever that might mean. So
Mm,
in my case, that's generally the breath work or the ice baths or plant medicine or a really deep and meaningful conversation with someone who's maybe challenging me on something that I don't want to look at. All of
yeah.
those are really helpful ways to be like, ooh, there's a part of me that feels very prickly and uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to ask you a question. Um,
Sure.
what does the shadow mean to you?
To me, the shadow is the parts of myself that I don't think are acceptable, that I try to hide away in the dark, that I want to just be Nathan, the shining light that everyone likes and loves. And even that, it's interesting because there's a shadow hidden in that. The shadow of what is it about me that feels like I need to be liked and loved by everyone so much? What is that? What is that shadow? The shadow there is I feel deeply insecure in some parts of me. I feel like I'm not worthy of love and that I have to constantly prove that. So there's some part of me that lives inside of the shadows of myself that I keep or that I have kept at times in the dark, because I don't want, I feel like if I show that part, if I bring it into the light, then I'll be destroyed, or I won't be
Mm.
good enough, or I won't be lovable. And so to me, the shadow is really just that denied, hidden parts of myself.
Almost like the socially unacceptable parts of yourself that, or maybe some sort of societal standards that you've internalized, which prevents certain parts of yourself being expressed. Would that be an accurate kind of summary?
I suppose we just aren't given the tools in our society to really to own our shit, basically,
Mm.
to really be like, hey, these are these parts of me. Because I don't think that it's necessarily that if someone owns their shadow 100%, I don't think that necessarily means they're going to be a very nice person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's not the necessary result. It's just they feel more okay about the person they are, whether that's someone who's really nice or someone who's like a dictator or a black shaman, like
Mm-hmm.
witch doctor energy vibe. Like I don't know. So yes, the society has an idea of what it means to be human, and I think to be a holistic whole human, you can't, or I can't fit into that idea that society has sold me. It just didn't.
Mm.
I tried. It didn't work. I hurt myself badly. So
Mm.
I don't know if that answered the question, but it's an interesting one.
Mm. No, it does. It does. And this quote that I took from Alan Watts yesterday, that manure is how do you say that? Contributive? Contributive. Yeah, manure is contributive
Yeah.
to the perfume of the rose. Love that.
Yeah, I love that as well.
Like you need
Yeah, I
shit
mean,
for a rose to smell good.
yeah, exactly. Good shit. You need high quality shit, not just any. It needs to be like
Mm.
really proper, rich, dense, moist, like the proper
The
real
stinky
shit.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I wrote a song years ago called In the Shadows that was
Mm.
really about this whole thing where I realized that I had spent, when did I started writing it towards the end of 2012 while I was in San Francisco, and then I moved back to London. And what I had realized, what I was in the process of realizing, was that I had spent most of my 20s running away from myself. And I thought I was running away. I thought it was the places or the people or the environments or the jobs or whatever the things where I constantly was projecting it out saying, oh, well, things are getting weird here, that I'm not enjoying myself. I guess it's these people or these relationships, whatever the story was. And so I
Mm.
then would move back to England or back to South Africa or onto California. And as I realized the sort of the one thread that connected all of those experiences was me. And so I started to turn back towards myself, or at least I made the intention to turn back towards myself, which is when the song In the Shadows came about. And there's a line, the second verse says, see me, see me trapped within this construct, beating at the locked up door, and gripped tight deep within my fist is the key to all I've missed, that the pain is just the teacher and the cage is just a myth. And so to me, that it's that indication that actually that pain that I'm causing myself by hammering at the prison door, if I just pause and open my hand, which for me again is something like breath work or an ice bath, that's when I'm opening my hand, when I'm turning inward and looking at my own stuff that I've got in me, the thing I've got in my own hand,
Mm.
that what happens is that the cage dissolves and I'm like, wow, I created a whole, the pain that I was feeling was just trying to teach me how to liberate myself, that I'm already free, and that the only thing that keeps me from being free is my own limitations on my experience of myself, limiting that I can only look at certain parts of myself and project the bad stuff out there into the world. Oh, it must
Mm.
be those people or those relationships out there that are bad. In fact, it's me and my shadow that is asking to be looked at. And the shadow can be fucking nasty. It's the shit. It's like, who
Mm.
wants to really sit in a pile of really smelly shit and go, wow, this is all mine?
I made this.
Yeah. Yeah. All this was given to me as well. And that's
Right.
also, but it's still mine. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's, yeah. So there's and what about you? You've written a song called Shadow Games. I mean, it seems shadow is the topic of the moment.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I wrote Shadow Games. in lockdown, probably about a year and a half ago now. Probably shouldn't say that, but anyway, yeah. Um, and at the time, I was reading a book called Existential Kink. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically, the concept of it is we all have repetitive, undesirable parts of our life, things that follow a pattern. You know, like you might always get into a very similar type of relationship, or just kind of butt your head up against like a metaphorical wall again and again, always making the same mistake. And the whole idea of the book is to acknowledge that there's a part of you, an unconscious part of you, that desires those things, and it's the shadow, like speaking through your unconscious behavior and leading you into these situations. And it's basically about befriending this part of you and getting turned on by the dark parts. But when I say turned on, or when she says turned on, the author, it's not like in a sexual way. It's kind of like an existential turned on, like an enjoyment of these undesirable parts of your life somehow. Mm. And there's like a few exercises in it, in the book. Yeah, and so I was reading that, and I was going through some like other trainings, like authentic relating trainings, that encouraged you to look at like what's preventing you from actually living the life that you want. Because it's almost like, as humans, I do, and I'm generalizing as well, like we have like desires and values that are leading us in a direction, but we also have these other forces that are kind of dragging us back or taking us in on tangents or in different directions. And through this authentic relating training, I started to acknowledge like these other forces that were happening. Yeah, so at the time I was writing a song every day, and I suppose the idea of the shadow was like on my mind. So it just kind of like started coming out, and I came up with the first verse. Yeah, it's just taken shape over the past year and a half. But what I find with songs like this is like I haven't put much effort into writing the lyrics. The lyrics kind of just have come quite naturally, which is really pleasing, especially because it's like about the subconscious.
There's a line in the song where you talk about, you know, so I can't remember the exact words, but the meaning of it is like, I'm here to set you free.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's the I, and who are you setting free?
Yeah. So I imagined that I was in a cabin in the woods, and I like enter this like really dark room with like very rich wood and like deep red curtains and like a roaring wood fire, and like it's only little lit by candlelight, and I encounter this figure, shadowy figure, and it's myself. And it's basically a conversation of me with myself or my shadow. And the whole idea of it is basically to befriend this part or these parts of myself. Because I mean, like you and I, we've been like over lockdown, we were meeting quite regularly with our group, and we're going through that process of finding your why. And basically, what I realized is my why is I want to encourage people to be fully themselves. And I've always found it quite uncomfortable when I sense like inauthenticity, like it makes me cringe somehow. Not that I am like the highest authority on who other people are, but it's just a sense of like when I sense that there's something else at play, it makes me feel uncomfortable. And one of my greatest joys is when I see someone like just being fully themselves. Yeah, and for myself as well. You know, it's a selfish desire as well. I want to just be able to be fully me. So the song is about that journey, basically, just befriending myself and setting free this shadow and allowing it to be whoever it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy stored up in keeping the shadow locked away. It's like it's a lot of effort to build that room and keep that door locked and pretend that you don't hear the shouting from the room, or like this. Like that's a daily work that almost everyone in the world is doing right now, to pretend that they're all good. It's all
Mm-hmm.
good. Yeah, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Oh, I'm busy. You know how it is. I'm busy. I'm fine. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
can you hear the shouting and the banging on the door that you've locked in the cellar that is the part of you that you don't want to look at because
Mm.
that sounds exhausting.
Yeah, man. Yeah. What's that quote? And I don't know who it's by, but the something like a lot of humans' problems are caused by him not being able to sit in a room on his own for whatever amount of time. Have you heard that one?
Mm. I've heard it. I don't know
Yeah,
the
yeah,
exact quote or who said it,
yeah,
but something like that.
mm,
Yeah, I feel that. I'm working on that now.
yeah.
That's like feels like a big one in my life at the moment is just learning how to be with me.
Well, I think like ice baths and breath work. I mean, they are an activity, so it's like you are doing something. You're not just like being passive. But yeah, that is an encounter with yourself that is not
Mm.
necessarily comfortable.
Yeah, I realized that I've come to believe in this moment, and it's liable to change, but that meditation is not a great starting point for most people
Mm,
because most of us are so hyped up. Our nervous systems, physiologically, we are so tanked. We are so just like juiced up to actually put ourselves into the position of just needing to sit and be with ourselves. It's like it takes so much. In the breathwork course I did, I came to understand really that like we do the yoga, we move the body, we stretch, we move the body, then we do powerful breath work, then we do more subtle breath work, then more subtle. By the time we get to meditation, we've gone through all the layers of the self, from the most gross, the most physical, down into the most subtle of like, can I even feel the next breath? Is this even happening? And from there, just sliding right into meditation. And I'm even deeper than that. I think that for many, like I'm barely meditating at the moment. I have mindfulness within my practices, which is amazing. But I'm really coming at life right now. I'm meeting presence through physiology, whereas I haven't really tried that route in the past, and it's just so working for me. So to
mm,
be swinging a heavy kettlebell around and hopping in ice baths and breathing and like doing these very physical things that just launch me through my nervous system activation, they help me to arrive naturally in a place where I am just here now instead of the effort I've experienced in the past. And oh, now I need to sit for 10, 20, 30 minutes. Now I must do this. That's like, it's almost like a punishment. And I know that I'm going to be sitting more and meditating more because it is such a profound medicine. And I'm also not like as intense about it as I used to be. I feel like I'm now naturally moving into the place where meditation becomes possible and available rather than forcing myself into this thing that everyone's meant to be doing to be okay in the world.
mm. Asana is the third limb of the 8 limbs of yoga, right? But you start it first because it's normally like the easiest in to the whole journey of reaching samadhi. Yeah, because as
Mm,
you said, a lot of us are not prepared to sit down um, and concentrate on one point for an extended period of time, especially nowadays when we've got so much
mm,
stimulation and distraction and dopamine and all this bombardment of information. You know,
mm.
absolutely.
Is pranayama one of the limbs, or
Yeah,
is that part of asana? Ah, okay,
it is. Yeah, yeah.
nice.
First time I've ever done anything like this, so it's a bit edgy for me.
Oh, you're
But
doing great, mate. You're
yeah,
doing great.
the thing that's exciting for me is that it just brings. But my music is quite
Contemplative.
contemplative, and
Nice.
I think like conversations, because these are the kind of conversations that we would have, you know, like a few years ago when we were hanging out and writing songs as a crew, and yeah, I just think these kind of conversations bring more richness and life to the material, and so I'm excited now to like talking of shadow work. Like I feel like I'm at a point where I'm much less precious about what I present to the world in terms of like I'm more willing to experiment with showing like different facets of myself, whereas before I felt a bit reserved almost, and you know I didn't want to be too much of a hippie or like I didn't not, I was just quite restricted in myself, I think, um, and now I'm just more happy to like just experiment and see, yeah, what people can resonate with. And I think some people's into music is through the words and through the concept. For me personally, like I love the music part of, and like the construction of it and how things fit together, the production, the structure. And some people are maybe into like the fashion of music and how things look. And yeah, so I'm just experimenting with all the different things. And so this is
Mm.
exciting. Yeah.
Nice, man. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well done, you. I don't know why, but I keep thinking of this wild page that I follow on Instagram. It's called Ubud on Acid.
Okay.
And their entire purpose is to like share the ridiculous shit that's going on in Ubud, like the spiritual teachers and leaders and coaches and star seeds and light language speakers and transformational sex tantra coaches. And I mean,
Mm.
it's they just shared one recently that I can't seem to get it out of my head because it seems so far out there that it must be a parody, that it must be a joke, but I don't think it is. There's this woman who is she is so full of plastic that she can't actually close her mouth properly because her lips are so filled with stuff, and her breasts and her eyes, like it's just so, it's like someone's drawn it's like a 13-year-old kid who just hit puberty, like a boy who just hit puberty with everything all at once, and he's just like drawing this insanely caricatured woman who's just all body parts,
Mm.
like.
She's just all
And
body parts.
it's just, well, she's all, certain body parts exaggerated.
I get
Um,
you.
but she's there doing these videos of like, come and meditate, or like, come and meditate with me, like where she can't close her mouth, but she's like, what do you do to feel more at one with the peace of the universe? And I'm just like, whatever you're not doing,
Yeah,
that's what I do.
I feel at peace with the universe when I'm not getting fillers.
Yeah. And I think in some way, but like I feel for her. I think that's why it keeps coming up, is I feel such an empathy because she's taken her shadow work and she's projected it onto her body instead of actually processing it.
Mm.
Like, what is this part of me that, like, in my case, I could say, okay, so I'm a super hairy man. I'm very hairy. And I have not seen a hairy man in advertising ever.
Mm.
It will never turn on a TV or look at a big poster and see a hairy dude. It just won't happen. So the image that I've got of a beautiful man has never looked like me, and yet here I am, super hairy and reveling in it, loving
Mm.
it, and feeling beautiful and enjoying running my fingers through my hair and the feeling of the wind blowing, and enjoying when I take my shirt off and I'm like, dang, I feel I'm a hairy man, like, don't mess with me, I'm awesome. And I had to do work though to process that. And there's still, when I take my shirt off on a crowded beach, I still know that people are going to be noticing and going to be kind of like, hey, fuck, have you seen how hairy that guy is? And I care. It's not that I don't care, but I care, and I know I have empathy for their perspectives and I have empathy for my feelings. I know that whatever judgments they're making is based on the construct that they're living inside of that helps them to feel safe within reality. And I know that I'm done the work that I need to be okay with my body as it is. And that's actually, instead of me going, right now I'm going to be waxing and lasering, and in this poor woman's case, I'm going to just inject and fill every part of myself that is supposed to look a certain way according to the society. She could have sat with that and gone into that room and opened that shadowy door and said, hey, what is the gift you're trying to bring me here? Which in the end would have been self-confidence, authenticity, presence, empathy, all of these wonderful things, that because she would have done that process of feeling into her own pain and her own not enoughness or differences or shadowy
Mm.
stuff. And then she would have had more capacity. But now she has become a literal living cartoon to represent the way that society pushes a certain image onto people. And she has come to embody that image.
Mm.
And it will never be enough. She will never find herself on the outside.
Mm.
And so,
Mm.
yeah, just I guess that's why it's coming up. I wasn't sure, but now that I've spoken, I'm like, oh, that's why it's coming up in this conversation. Why I keep thinking about her. Fuck,
Yeah.
shit, this is
Yeah.
hectic.
Yeah. So like the concept of the shadow kind of just does relate to that almost. Like she didn't quite
I think so.
get the memo, like her internal memo. Um, yeah, it's almost like shadow work or being aware of these parts of ourselves is just becoming more intimate with reality in a way,
Mm.
which does include the fact that we're all getting older and uglier. And you know, like
Yeah,
just
death, mate.
it's undesirable. But on the other side of the constant kind of processing and becoming intimate with reality is a sense of peace. Yeah, with like what is actually happening.
Yeah,
And through
I love
that,
that.
it's actually, you can meet other people in a like more balanced, genuine, connecting way.
I had an experience in my last journey with mushrooms. I find for me often with plant medicine journeys that a line comes through. There's like a sentence that is like sort of anchoring sentence for me from that journey that helps me to reconnect with whatever the big lesson was, if there was a
Mm.
specific big lesson. I've been a few of them, and this one was going in. I was so serious. As the medicine was starting to work in my body, I was sitting up. My legs were crossed. I was in mudra with my hands. I was breathing. I was like, I'm going to be the most amazing plant medicine journeyer. I'm experienced now. Like, I know how to do this. And I was taking myself so seriously. And what I was doing was trying to build a castle of the ego, even though I thought I was just trying to be like a good journeyer, but I was actually holding on to this self identity with someone who knows how to handle himself with plant medicines. And
Right.
at some point, the beautiful thing that happened is so-called by chance, is that someone who was there, who was providing the music, hit a gong, I think much louder than she intended to. And it was like, honestly did not hear a gong. All I felt was the energy breaking. And I just felt my ego just shatter. And I just fell back onto my bed. And I just was so happy because I let go of the entire story of me needing to present in a certain way. And I
Mm.
could just be there as I was, as the observer of the moment that is always here
Mm-hmm.
now, just unfolding, ever present, ever here now. And I looked around me and I was just so joyful to be here now with the people I was here now with. And the words that came through was just, I love being me with you. And I think that is really why shadow work, why process these challenging parts, why do these uncomfortable things, because when I do, then I get to be me with you. It's what you were talking about earlier. It's the authenticity, that when I get to be the real me with the real you, the whole world changes. It blossoms. There's a sense of, this is what I came here for.
Love that. That's definitely going to be a soundbite in the edit. Love that. That was so good. Yeah. And what a
Thanks,
relief
brother.
as well when you don't have to
Oh God.
pretend. Like, yeah, you can
To
just
be the
be.
guy sitting with the mudras, oh God, I'm so fucking enlightened. It's such an effort.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
so before we were arranging this conversation, you suggested that we should talk about the hero's journey, and that's exciting for me because you brought up some like little seeds of things we could talk about, and I was wondering if you wanted to like talk about that.
I do. Thank you for
Yes.
asking.
Well, I can't
It's
remember
become.
exactly what, I don't know what exactly you were going to say, but it was, I
I
was
don't
like,
know either, mate.
yes, that's going to bring so much richness to this conversation.
I think it might have been the fact that I'm a bit obsessed with. So there's all these steps on the hero's journey. For anyone who's listening who doesn't know, you can go just Google it, like search for it, or just find, because it's, in short, I'll give you a summary, but there are multiple sort of steps within it that I won't speak now. But basically, it's a circle or a spiral, and at the top of the circle is you in your everyday life. And every movie starts like this. Every book, there's someone walking through a city and they're rushing somewhere and they're in their office cubicle and like things are okay, they're doing okay, but it's not quite right. And they have the sense that something needs to change. And then they get the call to adventure, which is the invitation to change. And I'm not going to go through all the steps now, but the next step that I've been a bit obsessed with recently is the refusal of the call,
Mm.
which I just love. And I didn't quite get it at first. I was like, what do you mean? But now I'm witnessing it more and more in big
Maybe,
and small
maybe,
ways. So
maybe you didn't get it because you were refusing it. You're like, no,
maybe
doesn't
exactly.
doesn't apply to me.
I I didn't see exactly where it happens, but now even every day that I go to the ice bath, so every time I do the ice
Mm.
bath, it's a full hero's journey in that process. So, and every time I come out the hero returning home with the treasure that I found after defeating the boss. And the boss was just my inner resistance. And every time I'm like, yes, I did it, I'm a hero, I feel so good, I've got so much vibrance that I can now offer that gift to my people and I can be in service. I'm so can't wait to do this again. And the next time that I approach that ice bath, I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to get in. I
Never
think I
gets
should sort
easier.
of go, no, it never, it gets, I get more skilled at doing it, but the resistance is just the same resistance. It's like, but I'm working that muscle more of overcoming the resistance. So that's the step that I've been thinking a lot about recently, because I witness it in people around me as well. And I recently met someone who opened the door to big transformation and now is trying to just get back to their ordinary life. They're like, I just want to go back to my high powered job. I was making money. I was going to be famous. Everything was going so great. I just want to go back to that. And I'm sitting looking at this person and just saying, you opened the door. You are refusing the call. I understand. And you can't go back. You can't go back to that. You can try, and you will just end up more hurt. And that's fine. You can do that as many times as you want until you answer the call. But just in brief, the hero's journey basically then moves that you meet the guide, and the guide is Yoda to Luke, where Yoda is the one who can help the hero on the path to move forward. So again, if you are on your path and you're not alone, find your guide. Please find your guide. Doing it alone is madness. Like, it's a quick route to destruction, because not only that, you meet the guide and then you move out of the ordinary world into the extraordinary, into the subconscious world, the dark world, the shadow realm. And there you meet your allies and you find your tools and your weapons and your support, and you face trials. And then at some peak moment around like 7 o'clock on the clock, you face the big one. You face the Sauron, or the big moment, the big boss, where it's time to really see, are you going to live or are you going to die? And then the hero overcomes in some way, and there is danger there of death, and that's part of the intensity. What's so interesting then is, once the hero has overcome this big boss, this big baddie, which is generally just inside oneself, the biggest shadow inside the self, that then they find this treasure, this gift, this elixir that can help their people back home. And again, the treasure can also be internal, can find courage, find wisdom, find beautiful things you can now, skills. But then what happens is there's a refusal of return, because now the hero is out there in the world. It's like, I'm having a great time. I killed the big boss. I've got the treasure. My life is beautiful. And there's another moment of like, and I'm going to return to my people. And so then there's the homeward journey. And in the return, the hero comes back to where they started, but they are completely transformed. And they have this treasure, and they are now a different person who can serve their people with the treasure. So that's kind of just the hero's journey in a nutshell.
The refusal of the call reminds me of this concept of resistance in creative endeavor. And then funnily enough, also, when you were talking, I was thinking about Wolverine, because there's this thing with Wolverine, like, he's got these spikes that come out of his hand, but every time he does it, it hurts. Like, his body regenerates. Like, he can break bones and, bleed out and all that stuff, but it always regenerates. And he's got these like titanium or some sort of crazy metal implants where he can make spikes come out of his hand. But every time he does it, it hurts, as if it's the first time. I don't know why I brought up X-Men, but it just reminded me of.
I think it's a great analogy for getting into the ice bath every time.
Yeah.
Like, it hurts every time.
Yeah.
But then I become a dangerous man.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
I've been thinking a lot about that, like how I used to. I can't remember who said this, but basically that you can't be a pacifist if you're harmless, because then you're a pacifist by default. You're harmless. You can't even. You're like, well, I'm a pacifist. Well, you're harmless, so that's, you don't get to choose that. You just are that. Whereas to really be a pacifist is to be a dangerous person who is choosing peace. And it's the same. And then it's connected to a few other ideas. The one that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And another one is that it's not strong men who have broken society. It is weak men who have projected their shit onto the world and have overcompensated to try and cover up how weak they really are.
Love that.
And so there's this whole piece for me around that. I recently have started feeling and setting an intention. I want to be a dangerous man, because if I'm really dangerous, then I can be safe. Then I can know I don't need to be violent. I don't need to be reactive, because I'm fucking dangerous. I've got a sword and it is sheathed and I know how to use it, and I know how to use it, so I don't need to use it. It's
Love
the
that.
same. I remember from martial arts when I was a kid, that was what he taught us. The first thing was like, you're going to learn how to fight so that you don't have to fight. That's
Mm.
actually the point of a good martial art.
Yeah, I was inspired by like similar thought when I was younger. I thought like I saw some behavior in men where like it'd be really combative and status driven, and it kind of just I was like, I don't find that brave. Like I find that you're expressing your fear, through those behaviors. And for me, what was more appealing and seemed braver was like being vulnerable and opening up, and I'm not sure if I was being brave or not, where it was coming from. Maybe it was also based out of fear. I don't know. Probably, as most behaviors are. Um, but I definitely learned quite a lot from that kind of the discomfort of like being as vulnerable as possible. And now I think I'm in a place where I think over vulnerability is like can be performative and attention seeking. Seth Godin wrote a book called The Practice about creativity, and in it he says like the idea isn't to be authentic. A baby that is crying is being authentic, but no one wants to hear a baby crying all the time. Like only their mother or their primary caretaker can tolerate that. Uh, it's more important to be intentional with your communication. Like so, you don't always want to be like, oh, it's authentic. Like I'm being authentic, and so I'm just going to talk about like how I'm suffering and all that kind of thing. But you want to be communicating and expressing in such a way that it brings about an authentic experience in the receiver or the audience as a creative practitioner. And I really like
Mm.
that. It kind of like flipped the whole idea of like vulnerability and authenticity on its head for me, or like gave it more nuance. Yeah, and I notice nowadays on social media there's a lot of like vulnerability and like I don't want to say oversharing because people can do whatever they want, but there is a lot of that like me look at me, and it's sad in a way like that there's so much stimulation that we feel like to get attention we need to do those things, you know.
The algorithm asks for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, I think social media is a challenging one. I still feel challenged by it. I also know that it brings a lot of people value when I share what I share. And I know that there's a shadow in there, that there's a
Mm.
piece that is taking people out of wherever they are and bringing them into some kind of a behavior that's on the phone, in phone. And yet that's also the reality as it is in this moment. In terms of, I really agree with you around. So actually, again, plant medicine has been a great teacher for me in this, and also men's circles, any kind of a circle experience, a shared experience that is transformational. So whether that is ice baths, breath work, plant medicines, etc., but with other people. And one of the things that I learned through the example of the medicine was like, so say for example, I'm in a circle of people, we've drunk some ayahuasca, and shit is hitting the fan. Like I'm feeling very overwhelmed and I'm scared, and I'm now purging in a bucket because there's all this stuff coming up. And I've literally had moments where I'm purging and I'm being loud because I'm uncomfortable and I'm having a shit time. And then suddenly I feel the energy in the room where I'm like, ooh, my loudness is affecting other people right now. Like other people are being impacted by the noise that I'm making. And so if I need to make that noise, then I need to own that. Well, then they need to have their own journey with the fact that they're struggling with the noise I'm making. Or is this noise that I'm making because I want people to know how hard I'm struggling right now? And do I think that I'm struggling more than other people? And so what I started to learn was, because if I am strong enough to actually sit up and be in the discomfort while still breathing and holding my center and owning all my stuff without shying away from it or lying down or shaking, or I can just be there, that serves someone else in the circle who might themselves be struggling to maintain their center. And so it's this balance. It's okay for me to be lying down or purging or shaking or crying or whatever I need to do, and just acknowledging that within the space there is a dynamic that has an impact on. And it's very clear to see it in a plant medicine journey because of the psychedelic nature, where I'm literally witnessing the flows of energy. I can feel the flows of energy. It's very clear and easy to see in that environment. And so to me, it's been one of the great teachers of, and that was another sentence that came, was enough is enough. And I know that in our society, we use that as like, enough is enough. It's like, I'm done with this. But actually, enough is just a beautiful reminder that I don't need to be the Nathan that everyone loves and pays attention to and sees how shining I am. I also don't need to be the Nathan who's like, oh, I'm such a bad dude. Like I don't make enough money. I haven't done this thing right. I didn't do that thing right. It's all my fault. That's not enough. Neither of those serves my community. And there's this beautiful sort of flexible, fluctuating place called enough, depending on the environment. So, for example, if I'm facilitating a circle of men or a circle and I'm there and I just want to take up all the space, look me, it's all about how amazing I am as a facilitator. Look, or if it's just like, hey guys, my life's fucked. Like, I don't know how to hold the space in the circle. It's all falling apart. Neither of those are appropriate in that space. There is an appropriate response in that space that is enough. And I can find that place by being sensitive, by doing my inner work, by showing up for myself regularly, by practicing what not enough and too much feels like, and then learning how to be kind about all of those states. And that through all of that, I gain the skill. There's a developing skill that is enoughness. And it is not a static state. It is a constantly moving, fluid state of enoughness, depending on the environment. And so when I heard you speak about that idea of, what we don't just want to just cry and cry and cry because I just feel like crying. It's like, yes. And if we do need to cry and cry and cry in that moment, that maybe that is the appropriate thing, but it's learning the skill to know what is appropriate. And that's like the most beautiful, it's an art actually.
Love that. And my Buddhist kind of like background, or my interest in Buddhism recognizes a similarity between what you're saying and the concept of the middle way. Like finding the balance between the polarities. Like it's the constant dance of balancing. The constant practice of trying to find the middle way. Yeah. Yeah. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or any curiosities that you wanted to ask, or?
I feel content, man. I'm just wishing you well with your song and putting it out there and hoping that it can be in service to anyone who is on that path of trying to meet themselves again, really work out what that means. So hopefully the song can be in service to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. And do you want to just tell people where they can find you and what's going on for you at the moment?
Sure. The simplest place to find me is just alreadyfree.me. Alreadyfree.me. And that will kind of link to social media and websites, podcasts. I have a podcast called We Are Already Free, which is really inspiring and helping free, down to earth seekers to live the truth and be the change. Because I think it's a dead end street to focus more than 10% of your energy on what is wrong, on like how bad things are. Because then, cool, now you're giving your attention to how bad it all is. Unless that attention is specifically, oh, let's see how bad it all is so we can start to look at what we can do about it. And so the podcast is really for those who are looking for like a juice, for a charge, a battery recharge to help them to realign with that inner power of like, wow, I have so much power and I can do so much good in the world. I can do so much good for myself, which then ripples out to everyone that I meet. And so that's really the focus of my life now, is using one-to-one coaching and my podcast and the song, stories and poems and anything else that I'm sharing is really just with that intention to support people in coming home to themselves, to their authentic truth, so that they can actually live the life they came here to live. So that's it. Alreadyfree.me. And thanks again.
Thank you, Nathan. Peace out. Thank you so much.
Peace, brother.
Have a beautiful day.
Such a pleasure.
Nice
Thank
one.
you too.